change was, hey, there should probably be less poaching. There should probably be a little bit more ganks and a little bit less power farming. And how do I put this? Hmm. Yeah, there's like there should probably be fewer or less power in consistent jungle DPS, like consistent DPS in the jungle, right? Like champions like Graves have been really problematic. Champions like Jax are currently problematic in that like if you do a lot of damage with your auto attacks in the jungle, it's been a problem, and you're getting probably too much gold. Yeah, it's like power farming is really powerful, and we kind of made things in some ways we made things slightly worse. In some ways we made it better, but um, yeah, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and come up with another better solution because I think we did accomplish some of the goals that we originally had, but we also caused other problems. So we're gonna need more. Evelyn can power farm pretty well too because of spammable Q. Yeah, she's also melee, so she has cleave on her auto attacks, which is just an innate feature of Wild Rift. So the melees are definitely advantage there. It's part of the reason why I think you don't see many ranged junglers besides Graves, who sort of does have AoE auto attacks. If you know endstep, the answer is Shen. Yeah, I'm definitely really hyped for Shen. So for people who don't know me, Shen is my most played champion in PC League of Legends. Not necessarily by choice exactly. I used to play on an amateur team in the PC amateur scene where I used to play a lot of Shen. My team used to pick Shen whenever he was available. We'd play Shen. We'd play all these Shen comps with like TF or Twitch and stuff like that, and we would win basically all these games. And then it got to the point where Shen was banned against us all the time, so we never got to play Shen again. So then I was like, what was the point of all that practice? And then that was it. um, may I ask, where is the data taken from to balance champions, elo/modes? All of them. So we typically use ranked only, but we do have the data for non-ranked modes, which we sometimes look at. And generally, we look at the data by MMR bracket, so by elo. So we'll look at like this is the champion's win rate in high, normal, low, and then elite. Or well, they're not in that order, but you get the idea. So basically, we look at all the data really when we do balancing. Um, if that helps, hopefully that helps answer the question. Why don't you bring over newer champs like Vex and Zeri? Was Akshan's simultaneous PC/Wild release a special case? That was a special case for the Ruination event. I don't know all the considerations of like what does it take to do a simultaneous release. I can tell you it's hard. Partially, it's hard because PC doesn't finish their champ. Like PC doesn't have like a finished result champion that we can just use in Wild Rift. Like 6 months before we ship them so that we can start working on them. Lots of the things like PC doesn't finalize the mechanics on most champions until like a few months before they ship. So that can cause some difficulties for us because we kind of need to plan a lot ahead of time. Um, so I don't know exactly what all goes into the simultaneous releases, but I imagine they're quite difficult and quite costly from the champ side of things. But it's not my specialty, so I couldn't tell you exactly what it is. Let me know when you guys are looking for casters for Worlds. I've been told my screaming is S tier among casters. Yeah, I'm sure that screaming is the one metric that we judge our casters by, actually, for sure. Um, is Pink Ward not helpful for low elo? It is unlikely Pink Wards would be very meaningful for low elo because we wouldn't really expect that low elo player. We would not expect low elo players to utilize Pink Wards optimally. Um, much in the same way that they don't utilize regular wards optimally, but we would expect that paradigm to be much worse for low MMR players. So it would mostly be a high MMR focused thing. Any feedback on set release? I haven't spent much time reviewing the data yet. Currently, it's looking like he's on the strong side, but I am not the one who owns set's release balance. That's another designer on my team, so I have not, in particular, been reviewing the numbers there. So I'm not super up to date. I'll tell you, like after the next patch, I probably have a better idea because we'll have done a more significant review of the numbers together. So I'm not entirely sure. So can't tell you necessarily. Um, I wish Amumu somehow gets relevant in the jungle at least for some time after buff. I would like to do some Amumu buffs for sure. Don't know if we're actually going to be able to do those, but that's something that I've recently been talking about because I think we maybe overcompensated when we did the double bandage toss thing. I think we kind of overcompensated him with nerfs. We kind of expected the double bandage toss to be more power than it was. We gave him something small, I believe, if I remember correctly, and maybe we should give him more. I think there's definitely something to be talked about there. Time to play him. His set is broken. Time to play him mid. You're welcome to play set mid if you want. I think it's not bad. I've played it. I've played a couple games of set mid. I actually thought it was pretty good. Next balance patch is on Wednesday. I don't know, or I can't tell you. One of those two. Which one is it? Who knows? Just want to say thank you and love you for doing this. Thank you for coming. And like I said, I mean, I do this for the people that come here, right? So it's like, without the viewers, there is no stream. So, are you and August friends? Yes, I actually talk to August, not crazy often, but I recently went over there and talked to him about auto attacks, actually. Um, but yes, I do know August. I've worked with August quite a lot when I was back when I was on the game analysis team. So yes, I would say I actually asked August for some help with the stream, um, because he does a lot of these streams where he answers a lot of questions. So this was like one of the ideas I had initially, and I was talking with him a little bit about like, hey, what do you think about this idea, or like how do you handle all the questions that you get? And basically his answer was like, because I felt when I had like 40-ish average viewers, I was like, I can't keep up with these questions. How do I keep up with these questions? I asked August, and he's like, you can't. Um, was his actual answer is what he was saying was like I think that's literally how the conversation went was I went to him, I was like I went to message him. I was like, August, how do you keep up with all these people in your chat asking all these questions? I was overwhelmed, and I have way less viewers than you. And he was like, you can't keep up with the questions. You just have to try and answer the ones that you answer really well. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. You just try and give really high quality answers, and you understand that you just can't get to everyone. Once you reach a certain threshold of viewers, right? Because when I had 8 viewers, I could definitely get to everyone's questions, but at this point, um, it's definitely beyond me to cover everything. Have you guys considered removing Soul Stealer? I haven't seen anyone build it past Diamond but me. I really like Soul Stealer, honestly. I think what we should do is maybe something to make it a little more appreciable. Not necessarily something that I like the item a lot, right? Like I think how do I put this? Um, I like the things that Soul Stealer does for the game. I think part of the problem is that it doesn't do the most appreciable things for the game. Like ult cooldown is tough to feel. Um, that's why I think it's a little bit better as like a rune. Like Ultimate Hunter in PC is I think pretty good, because it's like just enough to feel, but it's also something that you don't really want to spend an entire item's worth of budget on a lot of the time. So I think maybe it should do something else, or should have like a trigger when you ult or something like that. That's cool. I don't know. Like, what if it just like what if it just like blasted someone for like 300 damage when you ulted? I don't know. That sounds sweet to me. I don't know. That's just like a crazy off the wall idea. And by crazy off the wall, I mean that one's really simple, but it could do something cool when you ulted. I think it needs something a little more visual because I think part of the problem that we've seen is that Wild Rift exclusive items that don't do something visual tend not to be picked up by the community. I think because a lot of the expectations are set from PC, where if you can't see what the item does in game, like if it's just stats, it's kind of hard to understand why you would build it over the items that you know better. Um, You do a pretty good job answering them. Thank you. Thank you very much. We love your game and your team. Since Wild Rift, I don't need to talk with my wife in a trip. Well, I don't know if that's good, but I'm glad if that's something that you value. So, is Jace going to get a nerf? Most likely, he will either be nerfed or we will try and reshape his power curve somewhat to favor the lower MMR players more and favor the higher MMR players less. Currently, so I talked about this earlier, and I did some like hand motions that I think probably didn't make any sense to people, would be my guess. But basically, in higher MMR, his win rate starts out really high in the early game, and then it falls off really hard. In lower MMR, his win rate starts out really low, and then it goes up a little bit over time. Our hope is that if we to balance him long term, what we probably want to do, and I'm not saying we'll do this immediately because this is probably more of a long term thing. Um, if long term, what we probably want to do is bring down Jace's early game a little bit and buff his scaling a little bit, because that will likely benefit the lower MMR players, but hurt the higher MMR players, which is currently the problem that we're having, where he's really bad for most players, but he's very, very good if you are extremely good at the game. What is high MMR for you because of the matchmaking incident right now? I can't really tell. Our official definition of what we call elite, which is usually what I'm talking about when I'm saying high MMR, which doesn't make sense because we have another band called high, so I should probably be more specific. Um, so we have four MMR bands. We have elite, which is the top 1%, and then high, normal, and low. I don't remember what the exact bounds are between those two, but I can tell you off the top of my head, elite is the top 1% of players. So I'm usually when I say high MMR, I'm actually usually talking about elite, which I can understand could be confusing, especially if you looked at that article where it said high MMR is whatever else. But okay. Let's see. Hold on, let me get some water here real quick. Okay. Okay, I need to stop playing and winning with Kaisa. Don't want her to get nerfed, Sag. Don't worry. We have plenty enough sample size in Wild Rift that one person is going to make a tough argument for nerfing or buffing something. There's plenty of people playing, even in the top 1%. So we've got lots of sample size. I think if y'all make one of Soul Stealer components, track for the bonus CD, it would fix the item. Waiting for the full item, starting cooldown buffs is ruining the item. That's fair. I think part of the reason why the Soul Stealer works like that is it's supposed to be a payoff for an early completion. Like the reason why it has mana on it is the original designer intended for Soul Stealer to be this like early game spike item that you rush when you're playing like Lux or Fizz or something. Well, not Fizz as much, but like a mana champion where you buy it in place of Ludens to try and snowball with your ultimate. Um, so the truth here is that like it wouldn't necessarily fit the original purpose of the item, but I also think it's fair. It's like, yeah, the item's not that popular. It's clearly not fulfilling the purpose, so maybe we should reconsider what the item's place in our game is. And that's totally fair. You've never seen a starter Soul Stealer? Yeah, that's totally reasonable, right? It's like most Soul Stealers are like second item, right? Or at least I believe most Soul Stealers are second item from what I recall. But top 1%, so MMR relates to the players. No, it's top 1% of MMR, not to their ranking, which is related. Those are correlated, but they are not one to one. What do you guys think of Solari Chargeblade on Yasuo? He is super strong with this item. I personally do not like that Solari Chargeblade gives Yasuo 100% crit. I'll just say it straight up. I don't like that. I think that we should make Solari Chargeblade only give 25%. I'm not saying we're going to do that. I'm not saying we're definitely doing it, but my personal opinion is that I do not like. I think very to me, at least very clearly at this point, the original design purpose for Solari Chargeblade was to give casters a way to get a lot of crit without spending a lot of item slots on it, so they could buy stuff like Manamune. But I think very clearly it has not fulfilled that purpose, and I think we should make it scale with crit instead. Like which could mean the damage scales with crit or some other stat on the item or something else. Like it could mean a lot of different things, but that's like my personal perspective. Who decide the three default builds for each champ? I don't know who originally decided them, but for new champions, it's actually my team that decides them. Um, so uh, it's like new champions, we do those item builds, but keep in mind we actually do them before we finish balancing the champion, which is inconvenient because like sometimes we might make an item build and then we might make a balance change later in development, where we're like, oh, that's unfortunate that it changes what their optimal build is probably. So like some of the new champions that come out where you see, yeah, some of the default builds are really, but yes, I agree. I would like to do a pass on default builds, but it's unfortunately quite time consuming to do them. So we're like slowly doing them over time. Like we have a set of them that's set of rec item updates that are coming in 3.1. I can tell you that. I'm pretty sure. I don't think anyone will get mad at me if I tell you that. Hopefully, hopefully I don't get in trouble for saying that. But we have a set of them coming in 3.1. It's not a ton, but we have some of them in 3.1, and I think we're also probably going to schedule one for 3.2 or some of them for 3.2 as well. So yeah, hopefully no one's mad at me for saying that we're going to do rec item updates because I don't think that's going to be a problem. Uh, don't tell anyone. Don't tell anybody that I told you. Uh, okay. Will you make a change in like in PC League where items of skills destroy the shields? Because a lot of yes, I answered that question earlier in the stream. So if you want to go back into the VOD and look at that, you can check that out. TP and Summoner, I've spent some time talking about that earlier in the VOD. If you want to go back, I have spent a good amount of time talking about that, so I am not going to go over that before. Um, let's see. I think I missed a couple questions. So let me scroll back up a little bit. Do you have any recent intel on Thresh's performance in higher elo brackets? It feels like his damage output, especially from the Flay passive, is too high. Very skilled Thresh players know how to utilize the low cooldown of the damage ramp to output more damage than a tanky-ish support should be doing. Off the top of my head, I don't have anything where I'm like, he's overperforming by X percent, or he's performing at exactly the. I don't have any off the top of my head answers for you. But what I can say is, it is definitely possible. I believe. So actually, I believe Roguefool should be able to answer this one. the charge timer on Flay is half the time as it is in PC. Is that correct? I believe that that's the case, but I'm not 100% sure. Um, anyway, um, but yeah, I could see there being an argument that is like twice the speed is too much. I think that's what it is, but I'm not 100%. Three-fourths, it might be half. Okay, so yeah, I think from playing Thresh, like I've played a decent amount of Thresh. I suspect that there's probably an argument that is a little too fast, but I can't say that like that's definitely a problem right now. So I'm not 100% sure. Why was Senna's suggested support item build changed from including Umbroglaive to Iceborne Gauntlet? I did that actually. You can thank me for that. It's because Iceborne Gauntlet is significantly better on Senna. That's why. Uh, it was also partially something. It was part of an experiment we're doing. I can't really tell you what the experiment was, because we haven't finished doing the experiment. But there's some data collection we're doing on rec builds. That was part of an experiment that we're doing to sort of get more information. I can't really tell you what that's about, because that relates to upcoming content. So, uh, but I can tell you that it is part of an experiment for data collection, and that's probably as far as I should say. Um, okay, what else we got here? If there's one major thing you could change in Wild Rift right now, what would it be? Is there anything? Oh man, I don't know what the definition of like major is. Uh, huh. Hmm. If there's one thing I could change on the spot, that's tough. I think for like one thing I would do that I think I would want to do this to make the game better for this. This is not even necessarily. So the reason I'm going to say this is because I think this just probably makes the game better. But I haven't really like spent enough time doing the like running the numbers and doing the research to make sure. But I think this is probably just positive for the game. I would want to make it so that uh, if you are near an ally and your ally does not last hit the minion, and they have more gold than you get a little bit more gold. Basically, I don't think that like currently, and this is a problem for low MMR supports pretty much exclusively. If your ally is really bad at last hitting, you actually get punished as the support because they miss the last hit, and that the last hit would actually give you more gold. So essentially, what I would want to do is rebalance gold economy a little bit for support so that your ally being bad at last hitting is less punishing for you. Not necessarily saying that it shouldn't have any punishment, but just so that it's like a little bit less punishing. Basically to help out lower MMR support players, like because there's nothing you can do about your ally being bad at last hitting. So, um, okay, hold on. Let me catch up with some of the answer or some of the things here. What do you guys think of hard CC? Full CC comps are only playable when against when using Olaf or Mundo. I don't think we necessarily have any strong thoughts about like hard CC in the game. Um, we've been talking about maybe making some changes to tenacity, but not really anything super significant. Um, which enchant do you think is the strongest? Probably Zhonya's. I think arguably Zhonya's is going to be a hard one to top. Zhonya's also has a problem if it has no levers, so we can't. It's really hard to nerf it. We can pretty much only nerf the cost and the cooldown, right? It's like that's like a really small number of levers, so that's a tough one. Um, it's Elemental Rift, and Sev wants Elemental Rift. That's true. I do like Elemental Rift a lot. Like it's just so good. Is Sweet Tooth? I can't even talk. Is Sweet Tooth too good? I talked about this a little bit earlier on stream. No, Sweet Tooth is actually weaker than the other options most of the time. By data. It is very popular, which we believe is because it has the most visual effect of any of the runes in that drawer. And we've noticed the same thing is true of basically all of the other runes that have visible effects, like bone plating, for example, where they are significantly more popular, even if they are less powerful. Anything that has a visual effect on it is basically more popular than the other runes in that drawer, with basically no exceptions. And so our expectation is it will be popular and people will feel like it's powerful because it is visible, and because the other runes aren't visible. Honestly, I think Protobelt's really strong. Yeah, I think that's fair. Protobelt's quite strong for sure. Cloud Dragon used to be the best dragon based on win rate. Is that still true? I don't know. Off the top of my head, I have not looked into that data recently at all. Um, why isn't Zanya's an item, not a boot enchantment? Because we can't have actives on items in Wild Rift, so we need to have if it has an active, um, it goes on the boots. we have as a Zanya's replacement, we have Crystal Embracer, right? Like Crystal Embracer is the AP armor item that Zanya's is in PC. In PC, that has an active. We don't have item actives in Wild Rift, so therefore that has to be a different item, and Zanya's have to be a boot active. Support golden accumulation shouldn't be so dependent on your laner's ability to CS. Yes, I think it should be a little bit less dependent upon it. Junglers seem to get too much XP from minions after gank slash waiting in a brush. Yes, I think junglers overall have too much XP, and I would like to nerf jungle XP, but at the same time, jungle isn't a very popular role, so we don't want to just straight nerf it. So we need to do something to make it more satisfying, but probably a little bit less powerful. Uh, how do you feel about laughably weak towers are right now? Towers are intended to be pretty easy to kill. That's how games end. If towers don't die, games end. It is possible towers snowball the game too easily. It's something we've spent time talking about. That maybe tower pushing and fast pushing towers is too good at snowballing the game. We do want the towers to die fast, but it is possible you get too much gold for killing towers. That's something we've talked about and something we're more likely to nerf than we are to make towers tankier because we don't want to like potentially make games last too much longer by making towers really tanky, but we might want to make the reward for taking a tower slightly smaller. What are your thoughts on passive experience? I would personally not like to nerf passive experience slightly, but we would need to do some pretty significant rebalancing to do that because the game is pretty heavily based around passive experience. I would personally like to do some rebalancing of where EXP comes from, but I don't want to unintentionally nerf the support. That being said, passive experience is a significant contributor to the fact that it is very, very hard to get meaningfully differentiated from the large bulk of people in terms of personal game state. Basically, what I'm saying here is it's hard to get very many levels away from most of the other people in the game. And a lot of the reason why that is passive experience. I think meaningfully differentiating more of the players in the game in terms of experience would be a good thing for the game. Not necessarily saying we want to like go really hard on this immediately, but I am saying that I think it would be a good thing for the game if we went a little bit further in that direction. Um, can you remove Evelyn so Chief Aragon won't stream again? Probably not, but it's always on the table. I mean, you go 2-0 in lane and then go to Dragon, and the other Baron owner gets plus 1k plus on you from the tower. Yeah, generally I think that the tower is worth probably too much gold. I don't necessarily think that the tower, that the tower being vulnerable is a bad thing. Like the tower being very vulnerable to being killed is I think overall good for the game, but currently I think the reward for doing so is probably too large. Are you guys thinking about a system where you can end the match prematurely if someone on your team is in ranked as AFK? I don't know. That's not my team that would handle a system like that. What do you mean jungle is an appealing role? Easily most meaningful role. Power does not necessarily equal appeal. Jungle isn't the most popular role, even though it is, unarguably very powerful. Yay buff support role. We could buff support. I'm not interested mostly. I'm not interested in like straight buffing support. I just don't want to make it weaker necessarily. At the current. Thoughts on the 415 move speed cap? Are you talking about the soft cap, the soft movement speed cap at 415, or are you talking about something else? Do you guys think adding items with stats and active effects like Gore Drinker on or PC Zonias? We are not going to add active items to the game, at least certainly not anytime soon. I don't think we're very likely to add it because we generally believe that the Boots active item system is a very good design, and we really like the Boots active system. Please don't nerf passive EXP/gold for supports. We broke AF already. Yes, I'm talking about if we were going to nerf passive XP and gold, we would want to do something for supports to make sure that they're not like super poor. Are there any champion/mode releases which you were not satisfied with how they worked on release? In terms of items, I think we're not super happy with how Mega Drive and Seed Jar went. Mega Drive in terms of functionality, there were some issues there. Seed Jar in terms of satisfaction, I think is really not matched up to the bar. Not to dunk on Rogue Fool's items, but I think he would generally probably agree that those things haven't really matched up with how we wanted them to be in terms of how they worked on release. Those are just some recent examples. Kale was OP. That was my fault. I talked about this a little bit earlier on stream, so if you want to hear about that, you can look earlier in the VOD. I wasn't really happy with her balance state for sure. Like she was definitely way too strong, and I think that's mostly my fault because I tried to get her power curve right instead of balancing her, which I think long term is probably still the right decision. But that kind of leads into like, hey, we are spending more time doing champion balance in the future because I didn't have enough time to do both. What's your opinion on support itemization? I feel like ATM they just built tank items. Zeke's is really the only one that's used. Deadman's Blade is probably too strong. We should probably nerf Deadman's, and then we should probably take a look at rebalancing tank support itemization. And I think the reality is that the other tank support items probably could use satisfaction buffs. I think Zeke's is good. I'm the one who buffed Zeke's like many, many, many months ago, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. That like basically had all the effects that I was looking for, instantly. It was like such a successful change. I think we could probably do some similar things for some of the other tank support items, except they'd probably need more power shifting rather than just straight buffs, which is what I did for Zeke's, because they don't have like they're actually most of the other support items are actually more powerful than Zeke's was back when I buffed it. So yeah, that's sort of where they are now. Fun fact: you can jump on seed jars plants when playing Jax. That's awesome. I actually did not know that. That's actually cool. Um, I read on the Chinese server patch notes they will be changing the likelihood supports can get MVP/SVP. Do you know anything about that? No, I don't know anything about that. Sorry. Um, what was said about power jungle farming? Someone in chat had connection issues. I don't remember what I said about jungle power farming. Basically, what I said is like we'd like to do something for jungle that is satisfaction up, but probably power down, um, because jungle is currently very popular, but or sorry, jungle is currently very powerful, but not that popular for most players. Was there any talk about jungle items? May I have missed it? You were talking about specifically jungle items like the PC jungle items or just itemization on junglers in general? You're going to have to be more specific. Do you guys plan on turning TP into a spell? No, I talked about this earlier, but that is very unlikely to happen ever. Please don't nerf Deadman's Blade. I'm basically the only player in server who builds it on Orianna. You are probably the only player on the server who builds it on Orianna. I agree. That part is probably true. But I think personally, I think it's probably too strong long term. Your thoughts on Wild Rift competition like Pokemon Unite? I like Pokemon Unite. I think it's actually like a meaningfully different game though. Pokemon Unite is like definitely trying to appeal to a different audience than Wild Rift, and it is like very clearly intentionally less competitive in many ways. Wild Rift is intending to be like sort of the competitive, mobile MOBA, right? Like that's what it's all about. Pokemon Unite is definitely not aiming for that same audience, so I don't think there's as much direct competition as people might expect. There's definitely some competition for sure, right? I mean, they're both mobile MOBAs, but there's probably not as much competition as you might think, because the overlap in the audiences is not like 100%, right? It's like the overlap in the audiences is like if my hands are circles, right? There's some, but it's not 100% for sure. Overall, though, I've actually had a good time playing Pokemon Unite. I haven't played a ton of it. I've probably put in like 10, 15 hours. And I've had a good time. I think the game's pretty fun. But I also think that if the game didn't have Pokemon in it, it would not be very successful. So, I think it would be very unpopular, because I think there's a lot of things about the game that are not that appealing for most players, and a lot of people get brought in by the Pokemon, and many people even stay for the some of the fun stuff that's in the game. But I think it would have been very hard for them to get the game off the ground if Pokemon was not the thing that brought people in. Um, so Okay. Do reports in general work for trolls and inters? I have no idea how the report system works. When will emeralds and platinums disappear from matchmaking? I don't really know what you mean. Like PC jungle items, I've played Arena and Valor before, which had also had jungle items to give jungle champs a special purpose or press them into their niche. Well, something that's interesting you might note is that PC's actually removed jungle items for a bunch of reasons, right? It pigeonholes builds and leads to some really awkward build optimizations and stuff like that. So I don't think we're in like I think if we were going to do jungle items, which I'm not saying we're going to, if we were going to do jungle items, we would probably do jungle items much more like PC's jungle items, where they disappear after you smite a certain number of times or after some amount of game time or something like that. I think we are way more likely to um, do like disappearing items rather than special items that only junglers can build, because that we know what that system looks like in PC. They tried that for many years, and I think generally speaking, we would not be happy with that system in Wild Rift most likely. Not that it's impossible, right? We could come up with a particularly great version of that system that we'd be really happy with, but I think it's unlikely. Are you excited about Wild Rift esports this year one Pog slide? Yes, I am super hyped for Wild Rift esports. I love watching Wild Rift. I it's another thing. It's kind of similar to the experience of like playing a lot of Wild Rift and then trying to play PC again. Is like watching a lot of Wild Rift esports and then going back to PC esports is like it feels so slow to me. Like some of the games just had nothing happen. And I'm just like, wow, this is so lame. Why isn't someone dying or like someone doing something cool? These are our closing minutes. Yeah, there's. I'll give you another. I don't know. I'll finish out the questions here. I will. I will put this line below that. I will try not to respond. So let's see. All right, so let me get the rest of the response. Also, if you pass it on the comm team, I think it would be nice to include smaller quality of life updates like High Noon Senna's horse cloppity clops. That sounds good. I can talk to someone about that, but I can't promise anything. Would you say the same about Wild Rift and the League of Legends IP? I don't think so. Like Wild Rift would probably not be as popular if it was not like a literal League of Legends game, but I don't think Wild Rift is standing alone just because of League of Legends. Is like League of Legends is not like the appeal of League of Legends is not like people being attached exclusively to the character that they play, right? It's like some people for sure that's true, but I think more people are attached to the League of Legends gameplay, and so telling people this has gameplay like League of Legends is a good way to get people into the game. So uh, I think that's like uh, that is a fair criticism of Wild Rift though, for sure. It's like it's certainly more successful